There are deep Christian themes in The Two Towers, just as in all of Middle-earth, but people deny this because Tolkien wasn't about allegory. However, Tolkien's faith seeps into the characters from The Two Towers movie. Join Matt Vandevort and I as we discuss the subtle themes in this movie that you haven't picked up on before. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the White City Podcast. Today I've got back with me one of my co-hosts, Matt Vandevort.
Hello.
It's great to have you back, Matt.
Thanks, Philip.
And we, as I said in the intro there, we're going to be talking about the Two Towers movie and some themes that, some general themes that I've kind of narrowed down to a few important characters through the story. So those being Gandalf, Aragorn, Faramir, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum. Kind of in that order. So we'll just go through each, talking about some different themes with them, particularly that would be more Christian worldview, I guess, focused. Not that we're trying to, shove these things and be like, oh, this is like exactly clear what Tolkien is all about, like creating a Christian story more or less, but these are just what naturally happen to flow from his writings.
Yeah, I think a lot of these themes, like Tolkien was explicitly, it's kind of well known that he didn't like allegory, and that was one of his criticisms of Chronicles of Narnia, actually, is that he felt it was way too allegorical, which it pretty much beats you over the head with this is an allegory, but which I enjoy Chronicles of Narnia, but I think that Tolkien's sort of underlying faith and just kind of the fact that he had that as part of himself, it comes out very clearly in the story. So
Right. So I think that probably like one of the, um, I don't know if it's something that people think about a lot when they watch the Two Towers movie, but um, Gandalf, when he's talking about how he's like come back from being Gandalf the Grey, he refers to being like sent back.
yeah,
So obviously there was somebody was sending him, and I can't remember from reading the Two Towers if that's like if the language was like particular that it would have been referring to someone in particular, but
yeah. So I don't know if Tolkien anywhere explicitly says who it is that sends him back, because we know that he was initially sent, sort of commissioned by the Valar. Um, but I know, like, kind of the prevailing theory, and the theory that I like the most, is that it's not the Valar that send him back, it's Iluvatar sending him back. Kind of in a, the Valar made this decision to oppose evil, and this is me putting my stamp of approval on it, and seeing it through. Kind of one of the few places of, it's not directly mentioned, but it's kind of direct intervention, which doesn't happen a lot in Tolkien's stories. I think I can think of one place where it's explicitly stated that Iluvatar intervenes, which is with the Númenóreans sailing back to, or trying to sail to Valinor, and but yeah, so I think it is an instance of, this is Iluvatar kind of more directly intervening in the story, rather than uh rather than kind of the Valar being like, nope, you have to go back, because again, with when the Valar send Gandalf and the rest of the Astari, it's sort of a, all right, now you're gonna sail to Middle Earth and get there, by boat. Whereas when Gandalf comes back, he's like, I faded out of time and existence, and then I kind of just woke up on the mountain like a few hours later, but to me it felt like an eternity, which I always kind of interpret as he's not, for that brief period of time, he's not actually in Arda anywhere. He's not in the created world. I almost called that the Mundus. I'm thinking about Elder Scrolls. But he's not in the created world. He is now back outside of the world with Eru, and Eru goes, no, 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 go back, go back. Here's your you've got stuff to do. And so,
Right.
and then he proceeds to basically get stuff done. Pretty much from the moment he gets back, he's just like, all right, it's go time. Which I think is why, like, what I find interesting, because the colors of the different wizards are never really explicitly stated to mean anything, but then there's people talk about different ideas of, like, okay, why is Gandalf the Grey? Why is Saruman the White? And then why does Gandalf become Gandalf the White? And all this stuff. And I think it's, I think we've talked about how, before, my kind of take on Gandalf the Grey is that Gandalf the Grey is sort of just like moving around, nudging people in the right direction and being like, hey, you should go take your kingdom back and kill that dragon. And hey, maybe this hobbit should go on an adventure. And whereas Gandalf the White is like, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do this, and everybody needs to get their crap together because we need to go take care of this right now.
Yeah. No, that's yeah. So true. It's like it's interesting, and I could have put down there too about, like, I don't really, just watching for this time, when I watched it this time around,
Yeah.
I don't entirely get, like, all of the point behind, like, Gandalf not revealing Gandalf the White to Theoden until
Yeah.
he, like,
So
gets there.
so in my estimation, so I will say that is one scene that I think is kind of different between the books and the movies, is that, like, in the books, Theoden, or in the movies, Theoden is, like, directly cursed, and it's kind of implied that he's, like, Saruman is, like, possessing him, almost. Like, when Gandalf rebukes Theoden and, forces, like, lifts the curse, basically, you see that scene of Saruman flying back in Isengard. And I don't think that is quite what Tolkien was intending. And again, it's been a while since it's been like, I need to skim through the Lord of the Rings again. It's been like almost a year since I really read it again. But in that scene, it's more that Saruman's influence is Wormtongue. Like, it's not that Saruman is casting a spell on Theoden. It's that Wormtongue is like, hey, everything sucks and you should do nothing about it. And so he, like, I think it's a much more, like, metaphorical de-aging of what happens to Theoden, where, like, you can almost, like, this might be a bit of a stretch of an analogy, but, like, in the Old Testament with, like, David and Bathsheba, where, like, David is the old king, or the king who should be out riding to war, but he's at home. It's kind of that idea of Theoden is, he's still the king, but he's, like, Wormtongue is basically making him depressed, and telling him that there's no hope. And Gandalf comes in and is like, dude, you're the king. You can make a difference here. And then, like, it's that one scene where, which I like it so much better in the books, where he gets a sword. Like, he doesn't immediately get his sword. At first he gets Aemer's sword. I think that's how it is in the book. It's been a while since I've seen the movie and read the book, but he gets the sword and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, I'm the king. I'm moping and sad because my son died, but I have time to mourn him later. We need to go take the fight to Saruman." Because that's the other thing that people forget is that Theoden doesn't. They're not fleeing to Isengard to hole up to survive. They're just passing Isengard and like, hey, Isengard's about to get attacked. Let's go help. Um, so Gandalf the White, it's him kind of kicking people into gear, and he's not nudging anymore. He's not meddling. I mean, he is meddling, but he's more directly like, no, I'm openly meddling, and so, um, yeah, I think part of it is that because they like nobody really knows what's going on at Edoras before we see what happens because Theoden like we hear Aemir being like, yeah, the king's kind of being an idiot. Um, Not really. He's like the king's being corrupted and all this stuff. But so when Gandalf comes back, he's kind of hoping that he can get Theoden to do this on his own, and then finally, I think he sort of reveals himself because that's his moment of, all right, we need to kick things into high gear. I'm openly moving against Saruman, and so like I almost think it's more of a uh, he's more doing it for the sake of um like decorum and also to scare the crap out of Wormtongue. Um, where he like walks in and is like, "Oh, hi. I used to be welcomed here and now I'm not." And then I think it's Wormtongue. It might be Theoden who's like, "What are you doing here, Gandalf the Grey?" And then Gandalf's just like, "Ah, you thought." And then he drastically changes things. And then very quickly, once Gandalf starts to sort of get things into motion, things start changing very quickly.
Yeah. I think what's interesting too is the Fellowship of the Ring when Gandalf is talking about him, getting Shadowfax from Edoras in the book. Is it, at that point he talks about how the king was not very kind to me or whatever, as I was trying to get this. And it was kind of implied that, like, something was already going on.
So yeah, something was
Um,
already going on,
yeah.
and like it almost works out in a way where it's like if Theoden had been in his right mind, he probably wouldn't have let Gandalf take Shadowfax because
Yeah.
Shadowfax is like this like
God horse.
semi
Yeah.
yeah like a demigod horse basically. Like I think the like he's supposed to be descended from like Orome's horse or something like that where they're like the Maras are like extra special powerful horses
Yeah.
that only the kings of Rohan would ride.
Right.
And so I think if Theoden had been more like he is at the end of the books, he would be like, "What do you mean? You can't take this horse, Gandalf. Go take one of the
Yeah.
other ones." Whereas with because I think it's Wormtongue doesn't really get it, and he's just like, "I just want Gandalf out of here so I can keep being sneaky and evil and somehow convincing the king to listen to a guy whose name is literally Wormtongue," but whatever. Um uh
Well, another
yeah.
thing too, like, I mean, if it was in Gandalf's situation for going into like the doors and all, like, I guess for like the theatrical effect, in a sense, would make sense that he's trying to conceal that he is like someone like, I know, like the white garbs and all might set people off, or Wormtongue or somebody
Yeah.
off, to being like, oh wait, like this is Gandalf's like come back and is in full force, like.
If Gandalf had come back wearing like fully out as Gandalf the White, I don't think they would have taken his staff because like Gandalf the White does not need a walking, not that Gandalf the Grey needed a walking stick, but he's just like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm just a poor old man. You don't need to worry about me." And then he, is actually friggin' Gandalf. So, uh
Right. Yeah.
that I will say is just a brief side note. I think the staves are really ambiguous as to how much they actually matter because like it's kind of implied in that scene that like Gandalf needed his staff to channel his power, and then like he breaks Saruman's staff later.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I think it's just like it's more of a symbol of authority. And I think that's another thing, is that like Gandalf the Grey is a like again, the Istari are charged not to put themselves as rulers. But like Gandalf the Grey is the wanderer. He's like kind of the advisor. He's this wandering, meddling wizard guy. Whereas Saruman the White and the White Wizards are like, I'm a wizard. I have like there's this kind of unspoken measure of authority that puts him kind of over people. It's honestly it's an unspoken spoken measure of authority, whereas Gandalf the Grey is very much like, oh no, this is just I'm just here to advise and to guide, whereas Gandalf the White is I'm here to raise an army because we need to go take care of some stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I think uh I know like Mark has kind of at times kind of secretly got in like this idea of like a soft and hard magic system.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I mean, we could talk about soft and hard magic systems. I don't know how long you want me to.
Maybe that's another
Because
podcast entirely.
maybe maybe I will say
Yeah.
I think I'm curious to see what his opinion on it is, because like to me it's a very soft magic system where
Yeah.
it's like you're not Gandalf isn't going around being like fireball, but
And he
but
doesn't need his staff to be magical.
yeah, like I don't think he actually needs the staff, but I think like again, if we're gonna get in like magic system talk and like Dungeons and Dragons, it's like it's his spell focus, where like he can do magic without it, but it amplifies it. But yeah, like I think that's one of the things that's interesting, and honestly, one of the ways in which like I don't think this is carried over as much into modern fantasy, where like magic is more of like a spiritual state of being in the Lord of the Rings than it is like, oh, you can go and learn how to cast spells and do all these things, because it's like it's a magical world. But anytime you see sort of systemized magic, most of the time that is kind of an evil thing. And so it's because I think for Tolkien, it represents people trying to control the spiritual goodness of the world. Whereas, you know, you see things like people like the elves are, they are magical in the sense that they're very like spiritual beings, but they live in sort of in harmony with the magic of the world, rather than, you know, Saruman or Sauron, who are out here like, I'm gonna craft magical amulets and rings and do all these things. But yeah, I don't know. We could do a whole podcast on magic in Lord of the Rings,
No, I
which
think
we should do.
No, we should do that. No, I honestly agree. I have thought about it actually.
Yeah.
We should.
Yeah.
We need to. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think, like this, not that Gandalf the Great necessarily was never like a beacon of hope to people, but like it, you know, with Gandalf appearing, you know, right at the end of the Battle of Helm's Deep, I think it kind of really focused in him as like being like, hey, like now Gandalf, like this is the beacon of hope, right? He's the one who's kind of like leading the charge, as you're saying.
I think that Beacon of Hope is a really good way of describing Gandalf the White, whereas like Gandalf the Grey inspires hope in people. Like he goes around and just sort of plants an idea, like with Bilbo in The Hobbit, where he kind of and Thorin in The Hobbit, he kind of plants this idea in their heads of like, hey, what if you did this? And when they're like, I don't know, he's like, I bet you could do it. Like he kind of gives them that little spark of, hey, I think you should do this, which then inspires people to go do stuff. Whereas yeah, Gandalf the White is very much like, I am here. Everyone rally to me. I'm I'm going like I don't know how many times he just like goes off to find an army and then shows up with a bunch of soldiers.
Right,
Um
right.
and or, different things. And so I think that uh that's his yeah, I think Beacon of Hope is a really good like again the scene it plays out a little bit differently in the book, I believe. Like I don't think Theoden. Well, first of all, the beacons of Gondor in the books do not go to Rohan. They just go out to the rest of Gondor. Um, so he doesn't so in the books they said there's this black arrow that I think Denethor is the one who sends the message to Theoden like, hey, we need help. Whereas, or no, it's the red arrow. Sorry, the black arrows are the
Yes,
ones
you're
that
right.
Bard uses. The red
Yes.
arrow, he's like sends
Yes.
him a literal arrow.
Yeah.
Whereas the beacons go out to like the Prince of Dol Amroth and kind of the other parts of because like in the movies you kind of get this impression that Gondor is like just Minas Tirith, but in the books it's like it's a whole kingdom with multiple cities and different places and different fiefs that are like all sort of beholden to the steward, but like they all kind of do their own thing. Like in the book there's a scene where you have like he like describes all of the soldiers coming in and they're just like, wow, they did not send nearly as many people as we hoped. Except for like the Prince of Dol Amroth because he's the coolest character that never got in the movies.
He is pretty sweet.
Like, he's so cool. And also like part elf, and that's just kind of casually glanced over. Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and also there's this other random commoner elf and commoner human who got married and then became nobles, and it's just like, but what about the whole like special? Anyways,
Yeah.
so uh, yeah, so that's what the beacons of Gondor do is they summon the rest of Gondor to their aid. But I like that scene in the movie because it's like it's Gandalf's plan and Gandalf gets Pippin to go and light the beacons. And so it's literally Gandalf lighting the beacons. Um and there's some of that in Gandalf the Grey. He's like the keeper of the flame of
Voodoo.
Arnor or something. Yeah. Ood, yeah. Well, okay, the Flame of Udun is the Balrog because that's probably a Tumno, which is the big E, the first. Anyways, we can get
Okay.
really nitty
Yeah.
gritty. Anyways,
I see.
but like Gandalf is, I mean, he has the fire ring. Like that's his ring of power the is Narya or whichever one it is that's associated with fire.
Right.
And so he's always sort of this he's always kind of had this association with fire and brightness and hope. But I kind of in my mind it's like Gandalf the Grey has like regular fire and then Gandalf the White is like I have holy fire. um I have the power of the sun. But um yeah. So I think that is kind of the main distinction is that Gandalf the White is Gandalf the Grey with like no qualms about what he's doing. Because like you look at, I don't think Gandalf the White would have hesitated at all if he was leaving Rivendell with the Fellowship. Because you read that section of the book, and like he consults with Aragorn, and they're like, "What do we do? I don't know." And like as he's going through Moria, he's like, "I think this is the way," and all that. And then Gandalf the White is just he never basically questions what he's doing. Um, yeah,
Right. Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, so like just that first thing with Gandalf the Grey is that it's that spark of divine intervention in Lord of the
yeah,
Rings.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's like that moment and that moment and then also like the other big moment that I see as like divine intervention is um the very end spoilers where Gollum takes the ring and then falls off the cliff. I think that is kind of this like bringing Gollum to them. Because like Tolkien went on record saying like everybody's like, oh, Frodo failed. How could he not put the ring in the thing? It's like Tolkien was like, no, he got farther than literally anyone else in Middle Earth could have gotten. And he physically like he was incapable of giving the ring up that close to its point of creation. And so, if they hadn't made it, like if they hadn't gotten blocked, and if they hadn't gone through Moria, they wouldn't have run into to Gollum, which means that Gollum would not have been able to be the one that actually ends up destroying the ring. And so I think that's the other moment of like
Yeah.
divine intervention that you see in the
Yeah,
books.
we can probably peel that one apart too whenever we do the Return of the King as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so moving on to Aragorn now.
Yeah.
We've got, I think, well, do they show more about Aragorn and Arwen in the movie than is in
Y-
the books, right? We don't hardly
y-
ever hear of Arwen past,
well,
like,
yes and no. There's a section in the appendices that's like their love story. So
oh,
we do
really?
actually.
I don't remember that.
It's been a long time since I've read it. I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember a lot of the details, but we do have this like it's like their first meeting and it's some of their conversations. So we do
Okay.
have records of their
Yeah,
like love story. But
true.
like Lord of the Rings is not. It's not like a character. Like it is a character book, but it's not like a character book in the sense that like um I don't know. Like there's a lot of character development in the movies that just kind of isn't there in the books. Like I know we've talked before about how in the books Aragorn never really has that like, oh, I don't know if I want to be like Aragorn's just like, yeah, give me the sword, I'm ready to go. Yeah, like he's just like, because it's mostly that part of it is that Elrond is like, I will only let you marry Arwen if you become the king of Gondor and Arnor. And so Aragorn's like, all right, let's go do this. Like he never, like he, it's complicated because like even in the books, it's like I think that's one thing you don't really get if you're going to if you watch the movies is that the Fellowship of the Ring, the Fellowship still probably would have broken at the same point, whether or not they get attacked, and whether or not the Merry and Pippin get kidnapped, because like at the thing they're like, you only have to go as far as you feel comfortable going. All these things, like there's specific things laid out, and like Boromir never intends to go to Mordor. He's basically just going with them because they happen to be going south.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Boromir's going south because he wants to go to Gondor. Aragorn
He's gonna
is
follow
like,
him, right?
yeah, he's like, he's not sure really what he wants to do, but he is like, he probably is also going to go to Minas Tirith. Um, and so he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go south. Like I think he's more torn on it, but like the Fellowship is not this like, oh, we're all united in a goal. Like they are all united in a goal, but like there's a chunk of it that's just companions by convenience. Um, I think like Gimli and Legolas are more committed to actually taking the ring all the way to Mordor, and the hobbits all want to go with Frodo because they don't know these weird tall people. So so yeah, and so yeah, Aragorn like his whole thing is like, I'm gonna go south and save Gondor and become king. Like it's a foregone conclusion because like in the movies, we talk about how he doesn't get the sword till Return of the King, whereas in the books, like as soon as they're like, yep, we're gonna take the ring to Mordor, they stay in Rivendell for like a month or more, and at that time, Aragorn's like, "All right, go get the shards of Narsil. We're reforging this sword so I can go take over Gondor." And yeah, so like it's not that he's it's not that he's a shallow character. Like he's just uh once I saw this meme recently where somebody was talking about how like they'd never read or seen the Lord of the Rings, and they'd heard everybody gushing about Aragorn, and then they either read the books or watched the movies, and were just like, he's just that guy. He's just like the dude, like the manliest man, but also like in all the best ways. He's just he's like the epitome of manhood. Um, but he, yeah, so he's like, yeah, like I think the movies put a lot more contention on his claim to the throne, his relationship with Arwen, all these things that in the books it's just kind of like, yeah, I guess I gotta go be the prophecy guy. But yeah, and so I don't know. I like him in the books and the movies. I think I don't know. I think I like his portrayal in the books and the movies for different reasons. Like I think it's weird because I think that his portrayal in the movies is really good and really interesting. Like he is objectively an interesting character in the movies, and his whole like progression from I just want to be a guy walking around in the woods and helping save people randomly to I need to become the king of the world is I think it's really cool, and I think it's a really good character arc, but it's not really there in the books. Um, I I do want to talk about the last point you have on there under Aragorn about
Yeah.
Sauron fearing Aragorn
Right.
because I I think that's one of the most interesting bits of the book, and it shows a lot about Sauron's character. And again, this does get a little bit into Return of the King, but um Aragorn represents everything that Sauron thinks he knows about the what's really going on. He sees the heir of Isildur comes out of nowhere, um, is marching to Gondor to become king to oppose him, to reunite the West. To Sauron thinks probably he's gonna like overthrow Theoden and become the king of that too. So like Aragorn is because you have to remember Sauron has he has experience fighting all the way back to the first era. These like great houses of men, like Hurin and Hjor and Turin and Tor and uh, Baron and Barahir and all these heroes, all the way through to like the great kings of Numenor. Where like the Numenorians, you also have to remember the Numenorians. And I believe this is after Sauron had already forged the rings, if I recall correctly. Um, I don't know if I'm correct in this, but Sauron gets beaten by the Numenorians, and like he kind of finagles it and ends up using it to corrupt the Numenorians, but like it's ambiguous at best, and that whether or not he intended to lose. Like there's a pretty strong argument in my mind to say that the Numenorians like uncontroversially beat Sauron.
Right.
um and so Aragorn, this random Numenor, like the heir to the Numenorian kingdom, um is scary to Sauron because they've been involved in every time he was defeated. That sword that he sees is the sword that cut the ring. Like, that is the object that was used to take the ring from Sauron. Um, so, yeah, Sauron looks at Aragorn and he's like, oh crap, they're back. Um, what he doesn't, but also, Sauron is the kind of being that only recognizes power. So he only sees military might and like magical might and things like that. This is why Sauron doesn't care about the hobbits. This is why, other than like a hobbit found the ring, because, and this is why the ring gets basically confused by Sam, is because Sam and hobbits in general have a completely different conception of what's important than what Sauron or arguably like any of the other races have, where it's like the hobbits just want to live a peaceful life and to be, happy at home with their families and their kids, whereas Sauron expects basically everybody to want to be like him, to want to rule, to dominate all these things. And so this is why he's completely blindsided by the destruction of the ring, is because, and like Gandalf knows this, is because he's like, obviously Aragorn has the ring. Why would they give it to anybody else other than like Gandalf or Aragorn? Because obviously these are the people that are going to come after me with military might to try and defeat me. He has no concept that they might like depend on the little people, the little weaklings that can slip through his defenses. So yeah, and so, but like it's fascinating too because it's also like a misplaced fear. Like if Sauron and Aragorn went toe to toe, Aragorn would get crushed. Like he would, like that's one of the things that they almost put in the movie was Aragorn fighting Sauron, which then they were like, no, that's dumb. So like in the Return of the King, in the Battle of the Black Gate, when he's fighting the troll, that was originally Sauron, and then they just redid the animation because they're like, we can't have him actually fight Sauron. That's too dumb. So yeah, so that like I think that dynamic is really interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, and like you were saying, like it even shows until like the end of like the Return of the King too, right? Where Aragorn's kind of threatening Sauron and getting him to move his
Yeah, they're
gaze.
playing into, like,
Right.
they in the book as they're marching along, they start out like they just basically they're basically marching along the road, broadcasting up into the mountains of Mordor like, "Hey, Aragorn the king is coming. Like, you better get ready." Like they're literally like they're being really obvious. Like it's one of those things like if it was anyone other than Sauron who had any like sense of what was like a distraction, they would have been like, "Oh, this is a trap." But like they're coming out because they know what they can do to provoke Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder too. Now that I'm thinking about it, this is just to decide for that. But like, it's not just if you think about it, it's not just that like, oh, we know we've studied our enemy and know so. It's like Gandalf and Sauron probably knew each other at one point, and so this is like Gandalf being like, "Hey, if you do this, he'll totally fall for it."
Interesting. Yeah. Back at the beginning of time. Um, True. So yeah, I think. I mean, it's kind of a side note, but like as you're saying, Aragorn is very much this upstanding guy who, is honoring in like especially like in the movie you can tell this like he's honoring the women around him, and I think that's kind of something that they definitely did well. Something he would be in the book and the movie,
Oh yeah,
for
no,
sure.
he like I think in the movies there's a little bit of this like, ooh, love triangle with Eowyn maybe, where like Aragorn is like, ah, maybe I should just marry Eowyn and not have to deal with all this stuff. But like, even in the movies, it doesn't come across that strongly. Um, but like in the books, it's just like, no, no, sorry, sorry, no. Like he continually is like, you should go be the best, like queen regent of Rohan. Um, like that is one thing where like he's kind of like in the books, he also kind of tells Eowyn like you shouldn't come to this battlefield because it's gonna go really poorly, um, and so yeah, it's I think the movies kind of try to play it up a little bit more for drama, but like it's mostly that I don't know. It's mostly like Aragorn's not interested. But what's interesting about Eowyn is that like the books kind of put it that she's affected by Wormtongue's sort of curse as well, where she like basically has a death wish. Like literally until she sees Faramir in the Houses of Healing in Minas Tirith, she's like, I want to die in battle because that's the only thing that seems worth it to me.
Yeah.
Um,
It's that glory of Rohan that just, Rohan just like, to death and glory, more or
yeah,
less. So,
that scene is so good. It's like it's what like again. This is aside. This is Return of the King, but like the scene where they're just like screaming death, where it's just like, oh, they don't care anymore. They are fully committed to we're about to go die, but we're gonna do it because it's the right thing to do. And that scene is so good.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. So I think, yeah, it kind of like sums what I was thinking of Aragorn there. As just being the ideal man, and honor being that particularly particular, at least in the Two Towers, honor is something that definitely defines him. Um, and I guess another thing too is like, side note, like he definitely is, like he's a really good leader for like really getting people to rally behind him when he's really doubting whether or not he should be king.
Oh yeah, no, like there's that scene. Uh, there's so many scenes leading up to the battle, especially in the movies, where like he talks to that kid and is like, "That's a cool sword you got there," and then like it's kind of implied by the movie. You'll notice the kid doesn't show up again after the battle. The implication is that he dies. um, yeah, but um, also there's that the scene where he and Legolas are talking in Elvish about like this is not gonna end well, and then Aragorn finally retorts in like Common or whatever
Yeah,
it
commentary or
is
whatever. Yeah.
Westron,
Uh,
that I will die as one of them, and that's like kind of this moment of like everyone's like, oh no, Aragorn's scared. This might not end well. Um, but yeah, no, Eric. Like, I think that's part of his quality is that he is a leader, and uh he knows what to do to make people their best selves. Even though like in the movie, even though he's not sure of himself. And I think that like I really like his characterization in the movie. I don't think it's like accurate to the book, but I think it's and I don't know if I'd say it's better than the book, but I will say like I think it's a really interesting take on the character.
right. Yeah.
Transitioning, one of the changes of characterization in the movies that I don't like as much is what they do to Faramir.
Uh,
Uh
that has a lot to it.
yeah, like
That has a lot to it. Yeah.
Faramir would not have been tempted by the ring. Like he Faramir sees the ring and is just like, I am not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I saw what it's done. Like, I know what it's done to Isildur because I'm the only guy in the city who's decided to go read the library. And I've heard about what it did. I saw what the idea of it did to my brother. Uh, I have met my father, and that's not a good combination of things to have in the city. The ring and Denethor, that would go poorly. So, yeah, Faramir is like it's kind of implied that Faramir and Aragorn are like the last like this gets a little dicey, but like the last gasps of like purer Numenorian
Oh
strain,
yeah. Oh yeah.
where like
Definitely.
they sort of represent like even though they're not nearly as powerful or great as the original Numenorians were, but like they're the most noble, and they're like where that kind of strain shines the brightest. And so yeah, Faramir is just like, nope, I understand what the stakes are more truly than anyone else in this country, and so I'm gonna just let Frodo go on his way. I might have to kill his weird fish friend, but um uh, uh but yeah, so like yeah, Faramir, like that's the other thing that I think does come through in the movies too, is um Faramir and Boromir, like the dynamic between Faramir and Boromir and Denethor is so interesting because Denethor loves Boromir and kind of not hates. Obviously, at the end, you realize like he does actually love Faramir, but like he looks at Boromir as like, ah, my son who is cool and I like and is gonna be totally not the king after me, and Faramir is my weird nerdy bookish kid that never wanted to play sports. and so and so meanwhile Boromir is like, I love Faramir. He's my favorite person. and so uh so like they're both affected by the death of Boromir. But like Faramir has like these visions and stuff. And like I think that's the interesting thing. Like one of my favorite tropes in fantasy and in fiction is like the father who clearly has a favorite, but then the kid that he despises is like kind of secretly the more like him than his favorite is. So not that Faramir on the whole is more like Denethor than Boromir is, but like Faramir has all these visions and dreams and stuff, and Denethor also has visions and dreams, and Faramir lets his visions and dreams kind of guide him, whereas Denethor's visions and dreams end up consuming him because he tries to get more information through the Palantir, which ends up leading to him getting into 1v1 combat, mental combat with Sauron, which I think is something that people don't give Denethor credit for. Um, is that like you find out later, like, oh, Denethor has been going toe to toe with Sauron like this whole time. And the reason he's so depressed is because Sauron has been just like poisoning his mind, but Denethor is still like willing to stand up to him and fight him, where like Denethor also I think is one of those people that like secretly he also has a lot of that Numenorianness in him, but he just kind of takes it in a lot darker of a direction.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is so true. Like, yeah, like, yeah, because he's, I don't know, just like when like a side note, not to get too much of a tangent on for like Denethor, but he's definitely, he might seem like really kind of angry in a sense, but like but he's against Sauron.
Yeah.
Like he is, like he knows like what to do to be against Sauron, and they don't
Yeah.
necessarily give him that. It's like the breaking point is when he like comes across Faramir, and like in the book that's like really the point where he like where his character turns downhill. But
He finally is just like, screw it, nothing matters anymore. I lost my son, I lost my lineage, I lost everything. Um I'm gonna go die like the pagan kings. But look, I was just gonna say, Denethor, in my mind, is everything that Snape should have been in Harry Potter.
what?
Where
Oh
like
my!
so I I don't like Snape in Harry Potter because I think he's just way too creepy and weird and
but
mean
but
to
is
Harry.
but isn't he like the guy who though like at the end of the day is always like the one you can like count on is going to be on the good side?
Kind of. Yeah, like he is unabashedly a good guy. Um but he's just such a
Jerk.
jerk about it. Yeah, he's just such a he's just whereas like Denethor is like he's like the emo guy who's still like kind of doing all the right things, and then you find out like, and this is the part particularly that I think is a good point of comparison between them, where like you find out later, oh, behind the scenes this guy has been doing way more than anybody thought that he was, but uh it just like Snape's jerkness is because he hates Harry's dad. Denethor's jerkness is because he has like Satan's right hand man telling him how much he sucks all the time. Like, um, yeah. And so he, and I think that's why, is because he sees like, man, the line of the Numenorians is so weak, and like we are so corrupted and debased, and he looks at, and he makes the same mistake that Sauron makes, which is that the way you win is through might and power, not through like perseverance and like goodness. And so he looks at Boromir and he's like, ah, yes, my strong warrior son who's going to go kill Sauron or the Witch King or something. And he looks at Faramir as like, you are useless to me because you care about like people instead of winning. And so, uh, yeah. And then in the end, he realizes, I think he kind of realizes like, oh, I did this. We keep talking about Return of the King. We should talk about the Two Towers. Uh,
Yeah, we should return back. So, um, yeah, I think that, I mean, there's not. I think that the like, just to talk about like a book difference. I think it's just with Faramir's, like he never even is never even like cross his mind to take the ring. It's like he's like, hey, we're gonna get you guys into position to like get into Mordor, and I think I can't remember how much he knew about where they were going in the book, and if he like was like, oh, you guys shouldn't take that route, or if that was more
yeah,
of
I
a
think in the book, he basically like when Frodo and Sam are like, yeah, he's taking us to this place that because they don't know any better. He's like, the frick did you just say? Like, what do you mean you're gonna go via this pass? Like, I hope you know what you're doing, and they did not.
What's
But
interesting, just to say real quick, so the path of Cirith Ungol means like path of the spider.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Ungol is the first part
Ah,
of
you're right.
Ungoliant.
Gulliant, yes.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So like that's another thing that I find really interesting. The tower, which I think they just call it Kirthungol, but um, anyways, the tower,
Minas
like
Morgul.
not Minas Morgul. Minas
Oh, the
Morgul is the
tower like
city. The
past
tower
the
that on the other side, because that tower, just like the Black Gate, was built by Gondor to guard from people coming out of Mordor, which is part of the reason why they're able to sneak in through that pass, is that the tower is not built to keep people out of Mordor. The tower is built to keep things in Mordor. Um and so yeah, so they yeah, that's one of the things in the book where it's like Faramir is just like I think he threatens Gollum in the books where he's like, if you so much as lay a finger on these people and I find out, I'm going to kill you. Uh, and yeah, he does not like Gollum, which is fair. Like I don't like, well, I like Gollum, but I wouldn't want to have him be my hiking guide.
right. Yeah. Anyways, I was gonna see if I could possibly find where Fireman might have said something to them, but um,
Yeah. I also
anyways,
think I also believe that, because this is where we get into the gray area again, kind of leading into Return of the King. Because in the books, I believe the last scene with Frodo and Sam is like Sam thinks Frodo is dead, and uh, it's either Sam thinks Frodo is dead or Sam just realized that Frodo isn't dead or is not dead yet. But they fight Shelob, and then uh, Sam uh, goes off to either try and save Frodo or so you don't know, because that's one of the things they talk about in the making of the movies, is that in the books, when, because of the way it's split up, when the armies of men march to the Black Gate and the mouth of Sauron comes out and shows them the mithril shirt, they don't, like, the reader does not know if Frodo is alive or not. And so it's a scene of, oh my goodness, they got Frodo. And quite possibly got Sam as well. Whereas in the movies, they time it so that the mouth of Sauron comes out and everybody's like, oh, we know that they don't have Frodo because Sam already rescued him. So, um, so yeah, so like they get all the way up to Shelob, and do they get to Shelob? Yeah, they get to Shelob, um, and then I believe that's like the end of the book. The last thing you hear is, I'm gonna go save Mr. Frodo, or they took Mr. Frodo, or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, definitely. Faramir does. Um,
Threaten Gollum.
well, I mean, he does threaten Gollum, I think, and
Everybody threatens Gollum.
and he says like, "Hey, you guys should be
You guys shouldn't have him as
you
your
should be
guide.
wary of going this way, but
Yeah,
because you're going this way, travel in this direction and you'll avoid the enemy until like you'll get past." So, um, anyways, it's an interesting connection there with Faramir and Boromir and just their different reactions to the ring. And I think it's interesting too. Like in the book, it does talk about how Faramir is closer to that bloodline. Faramir talks about being Numenorian, and he's like one of the few people who like look out into the west, and do that thing. So there's definitely a distinction, um, and so maybe there's a parallel being drawn there, about how he's focused. But
yeah. I was gonna say, so transitioning from like Faramir, and then to Frodo and Sam and Gollum.
yeah,
Um, yeah, there is okay. So you just recently watched the Two Towers movie,
mm-hmm,
correct?
yep.
Do they get to Shelob in the Two Towers, or is that the beginning of the Return of the King?
That's not until the Return of the King.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because I do believe that Shelob is in the Two Towers
right.
book,
You're right.
and so I will talk briefly about one of the differences that I really don't like in the movie, which is Frodo sending Sam away
Yeah,
briefly. Um, like I think in the movie they did it because like, oh, the ring is connecting him and Gollum, and he sees Gollum as more trustworthy and all that, whereas like he always pities Gollum, like you have down there, like uh Gollum is always he is the one guy. He's basically the one person in Middle Earth, other than like Gandalf, who's not like, I want to get rid of this guy as soon as physically possible. With Gollum, because I think he sees himself in Gollum because he's a ring bearer as well. And so he's one of the few people in Middle Earth that can actually understand what Gollum went through. But um, I don't think he ever trusts Gollum to the extent that the movies portray him to do so. Like he trusts Gollum to be their guide, and he trusts Gollum to that, but he never trusts Gollum more than he trusts Sam.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like Frodo in the book is never seen as really. How do you say? He's not becoming like weak to the point where, um, I don't know. Like he's the weakness that he's shown to have in the movies, like isn't there in the books. If you know what I'm
There,
saying. Like
yes and no, because like he he gets physically weaker because he's like because as he gets closer to the mountain, the ring becomes like physically heavier and like
yeah,
more and more of a burden.
right.
Um, but and he's like slowly like mentally breaking down a little bit, but not to the extent that it is in the movies until he's right at the cracks of doom and is like, you know what, I want the ring. um and so uh because you also have to keep in mind, and it doesn't really pick up until uh Shelob, because he gets wounded by Shelob's venom, and it's kind of implied that Shelob's venom is like somewhat spiritual. Like it affects the soul, not just the body. Because like he in the appendices or in the end of the like in the conclusions of Lord of the Rings, he marks the anniversaries of getting stabbed on Weathertop and getting stung by Shelob. And so those are the two wounds that basically never leave him. So, he, but yeah, it's not until right at the end when he actually does that. And so I really don't like that, that part of that characterization of the movies where he sends Sam away. Because like honestly, this might get people mad at me, but like I almost find Frodo to be the least interesting member of the Fellowship, because so much, first of all, so much of that part of the story is kind of told like from Sam's perspective, because Frodo is so focused on carrying the ring and being the ring bearer and not giving into the ring, that's like all he can focus on, whereas Sam is the one that's kind of out and about doing things. And then at the end, Sam is like the one who's like the one good guy kind of left. Not that Frodo turns bad or anything, but like, so Frodo doesn't have a ton of blatant characterization in that part of the story. And in the movie, so much of Frodo is just like, oh, I am sad like the elves are sad, and everything is gray. And like, I think that's, I don't know, I'm being a little glib about it, but like, I think it's a really good characterization of like basically like PTSD, where Frodo is out here just being like, I am suffering in a way that literally nobody else can understand except for Gollum, but Gollum gave into it and he wants it back. Whereas Sam is like, we gotta go do this and we gotta go save the world. And Frodo's just like, I barely remember the world because all I can think about is like carrying this ring. And like, it does get physically heavier because I think like his neck gets injured, basically, like has bruises from carrying the ring. And then there's Gollum, who is very, like, I think Gollum's characterization in The Two Towers is fascinating, because the whole time he's going between Stinker and Slinker, and he's like, I want to help Frodo because Frodo is nice to me, but I also want the ring. And so, and also I hate Sam because Sam hates me, and it's like, fair. But and so there's this whole thing where like it's really interesting, because as like Frodo and Gollum are almost like on opposite trajectories, where Frodo is slowly sort of succumbing to the ring, whereas Gollum is slowly sort of emerging from the dominance of the ring. And, uh, like, he still has this sense of, like, hobbity duty, where, like, he honors the oaths that he swears up until the very end. Um, and he, like, I think that's another thing that I don't like about the way they changed that scene is that they make Gollum worse. Like, like Gollum doesn't try. Like, he tries to convince Frodo that Sam's a jerk and a meanie, but like he never frames like he's kind of not that clever. Like, um, and so I think that the way that he again that like that scene I just particularly don't like because it's like I just don't think it's in character for any of those characters to do any of the things that they did, except for like Sam.
Well, it shows. So it kind of shows that also like so Gollum was really changed in the movie because of the Dunedain Rangers finding him, and then they kind of beat him up, and then he's like, I can't trust Master anymore, and I'm just a little fuzzy on how exactly that went down in the book. I don't feel like that there was really that much of anything that he really ran into to say like, oh, I really just
Well, they do catch him at one point. Like he
yeah,
does end up in the Dunedain place.
right.
Um and I think they do beat him. I think. And like there is a little bit of that in there where they're like, "Oh, like Frodo's like they won't hurt you," and then they're like, "We're totally gonna hurt him because he's creepy and weird." Um, and so, and then Faramir basically tries to scare him into submission, but again, he almost can't break his oath because he swore it to the precious, um, which is why he goes after Frodo at the end because he realizes that Frodo's about to try to destroy the precious and like I may have sworn an oath to the precious, but the precious is more important to me than Frodo, and so, um, yeah, and so like he honestly the person he's the biggest danger to at any given point on that journey is Sam because he also I think technically he only swears that he will guide them to Mount Doom. He doesn't like once he's there he's released from his oath. um, and so but again his and also like the ring had such an influence on him for so long that uh the closer he gets to Mount Doom, the closer he's dominated by the real master of the ring, the real Lord of the Rings, which is Sauron, who also tortured him and also probably thinks he's a creepy, weird little guy. Um, like, again, if we're talking about people that are, like, unexpectedly spiritually kind of strong, like, Gollum didn't melt when he was interrogated by Sauron. That's impressive. Like,
Well, he
credit where
did.
credit is due.
He gave some information away.
Oh, he gave information away, yeah, but he like I think it's impressive that he's in the presence of Sauron and Sauron is like bending his will towards him and he like obviously he gives in because like the whole reason he's in Mordor is because he stops looking for the ring because Sauron basically sends out a subliminal message to all evil things in Middle Earth and is like, "Come to me now, it is time to take over the world." And so Gollum, having been affected by the ring for so long, feels compelled to go to Mordor, even though he doesn't know what Mordor is or where he's going. He just knows he has to go that direction. And then once he gets on the border, the orcs are like, "What is this thing? We should take this to Sauron."
That makes more sense now.
Yeah. So, but he does swear an oath to protect because, like, I think he swears because initially he's going to swear by the Master of the Ring because he's implying Frodo is the Master of the Ring. But Frodo's like, no, don't do that. You're swearing by Sauron. So he swears on the Precious to uh, to not harm Frodo. So that's why he saves him in the marshes. That's why he like hides him and gets food for him and does all these things is because like I think it's a combination of he's honoring his oath and like he does kind of want to change. I think there is that conflict of like he's an addict basically where like he wants to change and he wants to stop like desiring the ring and he wants to kind of return back to his like hobbity goodness. Not that he's good. He did murder his cousin before he even had the ring. So, but he uh, ultimately he can't. But then he is sort of freed in the end. Like it is. I think. And again, we're just talking about the Return of the King again. But I think it is kind of the instrument of like providence, if you will, in this story that even all things will work together for good. Even in Gollum's evil, it is that evilness and desire for something that brings about the salvation of the world, essentially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, I do want to answer this question.
Oh, all right. Wait, one more thing on just one
Okay.
last thing on Smeagol
Um,
though
okay.
before we get to the last question, which I think is it'd be interesting to hear your take. But yeah, I think it's probably the closest thing to like really like with both Gollum and Frodo, right? It's kind of the closest thing you can take from like what Tolkien's saying about like temptation, right? And like you were saying about kind of like addicts do too, right? It's like this like okay, I know what's right and wrong, right? Because that's the other thing. Like Tolkien's world is a world of universal morality, so you don't have relative. The story doesn't talk about whatever's the right thing is whatever you want the right thing to be. It's like no, there is like
Yeah,
a right
yeah,
or
yeah.
wrong decision to make.
Yeah. I mean, I
So
think like yeah, I think that's true. But like it is a world in which, you know, Gollum is kind of that tension between um like good and evil in a person. I think that's why Gollum slash Smeagol is one of the most interesting characters and why so many people love him. It's because we get this conflict so spelled out in him of like I know what the right thing to do is. I know at least I know kind of what the right thing to do is, and I like Frodo. Like I think Gollum genuinely likes Frodo as a person because Frodo is pretty much the only living thing in 500 years who has not been like he does kind of trick him a couple times but under duress, but like he's the one of the few creatures that has not stolen from him, who has not basically treated being around Gollum as completely unbearable at all times. Like Frodo is, he pities him, and so he's the one creature who's shown Gollum any kind of warmth. And so I think Gollum sees that, and he's just like, I forgot how this feels, and now I do like Frodo, and I think that's why he has such conflict within himself, is because as much as he likes Frodo, he likes the ring more, even though he doesn't want to. And so, yeah, like I think that is very much Tolkien's like Christian perspective coming out of like we know when we sin that it's not good, but in the moment, as much as we want to be good, we want the sin more. So yeah, Gollum is Gollum is like one of the most interesting characters in the Two Towers and in the Lord of the Rings in general. And I think in the Two Towers, it's like you kind of think, oh, he's gonna come out of this. He's gonna pull through and be good guy Gollum, good guy Smeagol, and uh, he's gonna actually help them.
Yeah.
And then Shelob happens.
Oh yeah, so for that last question, for what is the most epic scene for you in the Two Towers?
100% Gandalf showing up at the Battle of Helm's Deep. It's just so cool because it's just, I just love that whole scene because so a couple of reasons. One is like it just fit the image in my head so well of like this hopeless battle and then suddenly the dawn breaks and you see the glint of armor and it's like, "Oh, we're saved." But also like there's so many elements of it that are just so cool. The horn, like the blasting of the horn and Aragorn and Theoden just being like,
Yes.
"Screw it." Like, F it, we ball. Like like they they just it's just so good. It's so like I'm kind of like I like the whole Helm's Deep sequence. Um but that scene where they're just like let's do this and then cuz I mean like it's a foretaste of I think the most epic scene in the trilogy, which is the Ride of the Rohirrim where uh everything like for a brief moment Sauron's forces are like, uh, what do we do? Because we have a bunch of people that don't care if they die and are coming to save our friends. Anyways, so yeah, no, the Battle of Helm's Deep, the scene where they're just like, because it's like the next morning and they're like, we're all gonna die. What if we just went out like the coolest people ever? And so, yeah, I will make a note. There is a difference in the movie, and there's a few differences in the movie and in the books. In the movie, it is Amer's company of cavalry that come and charge down this hill and lift the siege of Helm's Deep. In the books, Amer has been at Helm's Deep the whole time. And it is I think it's Erkenbrand is the name of the like random Rohirric lord that's just out and about and Gandalf's like, "Yo, you need to get to Helm's Deep stat." And also it's infantry. Like everybody there's this kind of a cuz like everybody's like Rohan, horses, obviously. Everybody's a centaur basically. But uh in the books it's an infantry charge. He brings an army. It's not the riders of Rohirrim. It is like Erkenbrand and his soldiers, and they show up and lift the siege and then scare away all the orcs who then go run into the angry forest that showed up out of nowhere. Um, and so I guess that happens in the movie too. Um, but again, it's like it's just so cool. It's just one of those moments that's just like this is just so cool and fun to watch. And I'm very glad they did not take Tolkien's advice and leave out Helm's Deep from the movie. Because I think I've mentioned on here before that he once said that if they were gonna make a movie of the Lord of the Rings, you should just skip Helm's Deep. I'm like, no, you can't skip Helm's Deep. It's the coolest part.
For sure. See, so for me, like if I agree that like the scene with the horses running down the hill and all, and the light coming down is the most
Yeah,
epic. But like the Ents marching to
yeah.
Isengard is
I
really close.
I'm
It's
a
like
sucker for
it's
I'm a sucker
really
for
close.
yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I coolest individual shot is just Aragorn when he like comes back into Helm's Deep. It's just like the briefest moment of the coolest way to enter a room. But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm a sucker for like soldiers and spears and horns and it's just so good. I mean, I love the entirety of the Battle of Helm's Deep. I love weird choice to bring the elves in, but like cool, I guess. Uh but I genuinely love the like the quote, just the quote of they're all ready to fire, which, first of all, that's not how archers did things. They did not draw back and hold it. That's like 45, 50, 70 pounds, 90 pounds of weight that you're just like, eh. So that, honestly, the fact that the old guy held it that long is like super impressive. But, um, just the arrow, the thunk, the charge, and Theoden just going, so it begins. It is so like every year on New Year's you'll see the memes of like if you start the two towers at this exact moment, Theoden will say so it begins right at midnight. um
Yes.
but like
Uh,
yeah, like it's just so the whole Battle of Helm's Deep is so cool. And like the the orcs blowing up the wall and everybody beforehand just being like we're gonna die, but I guess we're doing this. And then the actual charge where they're just like, all right, let's go out of here. It's all so cool. I love that scene so much. Did you do you've done the you've done an episode on the Fellowship movie, right?
yeah, because we did it together.
Oh yeah, we did. Did
Yeah.
we do most epic scene in the movie?
We did not do most of the scene in the movie.
All right. I mean probably Balrog. Even though I don't like how they portray Balrogs, but
The
probably.
most epic scene for me, I'd have to say is Aragorn going up against the orcs.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's my runner-up because again, Aragorn. I mean, honestly, like Aragorn going up against the orcs, you shall not pass is so good. But Aragorn going up against the orcs is cool. I honestly like Boromir's death uh scene because one, it's like I'm a sucker for a good death redemption by death story, and so like Boromir being like, "Oh no, I've screwed up, and now I'm gonna go out in the most baller way possible by taking like multiple shots." And then, again, I've talked a lot about things that they changed in the movie that I don't like. My brother, my captain, my king. Oh my gosh, that scene is so good. It's like
Yes, it
it's
is. Hey,
it's just
dude,
like
I will not let the White City fall.
yeah, yeah,
Just a
just
punch
like
for the podcast name. Just want to put it out there.
yeah, no, that scene where Aragorn comes in like a badass and
Yeah.
just like I'm gonna also Viggo Mortensen deflecting a knife throw
Yes.
just casually. Like, I mean, okay, I'm assuming if you're watching or listening to this podcast, you know this already because of course you do. But like he throws the orc through the knife and he threw it at Viggo Mortensen by accident. And Viggo just casually just it's so cool. Oh man, yeah, that seems pretty good. But I mean, I like the fighting of the Balrog just because I'm a sucker for any time the first age gets a mention, and Balrogs are cool. Although, again, I don't think that's what Balrogs look like, in my personal opinion. But uh, it's still really cool because
Mhm.
it is a big fiery monster thing. And
Yeah.
man,
Yeah. So that about sums it for those themes. And if you don't think those themes are Christian or aren't important to the story, then put it in the comments. And if you do, still put it in the comments.
because I
Um,
remember every good Christian knows how to deflect a knife with a sword.
oh well,
No, yeah,
hopefully that's a different kind of sword, huh? Um,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah. Well, thanks Matt for
Yeah.
talking. It's always great to have you on. So
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
I appreciate your insights.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in, and catch us for our next episode next week.
See you guys.